call the roll, please.
Yes, sir. Good afternoon. Mr. Bailey.
Present.
Mr. Brown.
Excuse me.
Dr. Russell.
Here.
Mr. Brennan.
Present.
Mr. McDowell.
Yes.
Mayor McKinney.
Here.
Thank you.
Reverend McDowell, can you say a word of invocation, please?
Sure. Let's bow our heads. For all that you've done for us, for the blessings you bestowed upon us, for allowing us to see another Thanksgiving. We give thanks for this day, and for all that you've done for us. Bless this day. Create within us a kind of peaceable spirit that we might feel and sense your presence. Bless the leadership that is gathered around this table. Bless it and anoint us so that we might do the things that are necessary for this, our beloved city. We ask it and claim it in your name. Amen.
Motion to adopt the agenda with amendments to the agenda. Number one, Project Congaree added to item 2. Discussion of matters relating to proposed location expansion or provision of services encouraging location or expansion of industries and other business in areas by a public body pursuant to SC Code 30-4-70A5. And then number 2, short-term rentals added to item 3, receipt of legal advice relating to matters covered by a client attorney privilege pursuant to Code 30-470A2.
So move, Mr. Mayor.
Got a motion and a second.
Mr. Bailey.
Yes.
Mr. Brown.
Yes.
Dr. Bustles.
Yes.
Mr. Brennan.
Yes.
Mr. McDowell.
Yes.
Mayor McKinney.
Aye.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor and Council. We will move forward with our first presentation, which is the Clean Water Program Update. Mr. Clint Shealy, our Assistant City Manager for Columbia Water, will start us off. And I know he's got some of our great extension of the city family, our consultant team here. Thanks, Clint.
Thank you, Ms. Wilson. Good afternoon, everybody. Hope everyone had a great Thanksgiving. Good to be with you. Thanks for a little time to update you on where we are with the repair and renewal of our wastewater utility. It's been a while since we chatted about what our initiatives and priorities are. Certainly compliance with EPA mandated improvements as part of the consent decree are a big part of that program, and we want to kind of tell you where we are and paint the picture moving forward with what's ahead of us. As you know, CDM Smith has been our trusted partner since 2012 in this journey. They predate most of our staff that are working in the facility now, and particularly the management leadership. I do want to recognize Frank Eskridge and Dana Higgins are here today. Robert Anderson, who also helps us quite a bit on all things. And mention Brian Culley and Jamie Kelso are here. They're going to share a little bit of information with us shortly. On tonight's agenda, you have the third year of a 6-year contract, which is the second phase of the program with CDM Smith. So that is on your agenda tonight. Today will somewhat paint the picture for that. This is a very key period in our work with EPA. We have some new management that we're working with, and I have to say they've been very responsive to us, and we're grateful for that. We're having quarterly update meetings. We have registered an extension request for 4 major projects, and that has been granted by staff. We're still waiting on some Department of Justice signatures to ink that. That's going to give us a little bit of much-needed relief there to get some projects, give us some time to get some important projects completed. But again, a crucial time as we move from program development to project execution and getting some of these major capital investments in the ground and in service. I also want to mention 2 other things that you'll see on your agenda tonight. One is the rate study contract renewal with Black & Veatch. We're going to re-engage with them. We're hoping to re-engage with them to review our cost of service once again. We do that every year. It's a kind of a best practice for utilities to do that. And then Jeff sent out a notification about our bond authorization that those bonds that if you so grant us the ability and authorization, we'll use that to execute the capital project for this current fiscal year. So that'll be a funding mechanism for that. So really quickly, just some of the things that we will talk about today. Let's see if I've got this on. Well, Erica is not, maybe I'm not holding my mouth right. Can you advance one? Thank you. So we'll talk a little bit of history really quick. Brian's going to give us some of that. Talk about how we're in compliance with the consent decree, the program submittals that we've made. Talk about sanitary sewer overflows. That's a big component of us getting out of our consent decree is reducing that volume and frequency of sanitary sewer overflows, the progress that we're making there. And then the other piece of unwinding this clock is executing those mandated projects that are spelled out in the programs that EPA says, thou shalt do this by such certain date. We have so much more certainty about what's ahead of us than we ever had before, and that's largely due to our new contacts at EPA and their responsiveness in approving some of the programs that we put forward. So we really know the path that's ahead of us, and Jamie and Brian are going to spell that out, and that starts to paint the picture of what the end game might look like for the consent decree, which I think will make us all smile when we get there.
Clint, I think it's important for, because a lot of people like y'all been doing this for 12 years or 10 years or how long it's been now at this point, and that we still have a lot more to get done. Can you maybe just give a little back history on why we're where we are today?
Yes, sir. I will, and Brian will also paint a little bit of that picture. We were investigation started in 2011, 2012, and looking at, quite frankly, we were spilling too much sanitary sewer. We were having too many overflows, and it's not a criticism of anyone. It's just we had not invested in our utility, as robustly as we should have. And so over a period of years, these things don't happen overnight. And so we really needed to increase our investment, and EPA came along and said, thou shalt do that. And so y'all have been amazingly supportive in terms of the rates and in terms of authorizing these really major capital projects that needed to happen. And what we've tried to do is be strategic rather than rehabilitate. If we're looking at a pipe segment that's failing, we've been thinking about what does the carrying capacity need to be in the next 10, 20, 30 years. So rather than just rebuild a pipe the same size, let's increase the capacity so that we're setting ourselves up well for the future. And so I compliment the team that has done this, again, predating me. They've been strategic about doing that and setting us up for the future. It is a significant investment. We're about 2/3 of the way there in terms of spend, but we can see the light at the end of the tunnel, and that's a really good thing. And we can put that on paper, we can lay the projects out, and we can see what the timeline is. For the first time in a long time, I don't think I've ever been able to stand before you and say definitively, we've got to have these projects completed by this date. Those programs have been approved, and so now we know what's ahead of us. I don't know if that answers your question enough, but
I imagine Ryan and then will give us some more details.
He
but
will.
It's such a long process.
Yes,
and,
sir.
People keep asking me, when is this going to end? The consent decree has been going on for a long time, obviously, and some of the projects, as we know, we don't control the time frame. EPA tells us what to do, when to do, and how to do, which is also hard for people to understand. But I just want to make sure folks that are listening understand that where we are,
yes, sir.
how we got here.
And Clint, maybe talk about things that happened in the world a little bit since we started this process that doesn't just affect consent decrees like ours, but all across the country, there's been impact.
Yes, ma'am, absolutely. So our flood in 2015, EPA granted us some extra time because that added a financial burden burden and a workload burden on us. And then also the COVID experience, and that really slowed things down a bit and slowed our progress. And they've been gracious to grant us some time extensions that have helped us absorb some of the financial impact of playing catch up, if you will. And so we've been able to do that, and really proud of where we are. And again, we can see clearly the vision that's ahead of us and what needs to be done, and I think that's a good thing for us.
Let me ask you, so
Yes, sir.
when we come to the end of the deadline, you can see the finish line. Will our investment in the required infrastructure still clip away at the same rate to keep up with just general growth that we're seeing, or do you think we'll see some relief on what you request from us for wastewater infrastructure?
Councilman, it's a great question, and I think our modeling right now, as we look at, we try to project a 10-year capital improvement program, and then beyond that, our master planning work and modeling shows around 2030 or so, a contraction in the wastewater spend, but we have been holding off on a few important water capacity related projects. And so you'll start seeing more of an emphasis on the drinking water system as well. So I think that continued investment in infrastructure and replacing aging infrastructure and preparing ourselves for the future to be able to say yes to a Mark Anthony Brewing, a Scout Motors development that's happening, and improve water quality and customer service, those investments will continue. So I don't see a tremendous drop in that, but year over year, we won't have the proverbial gun to our head of a federal
But it's
government
fair to say we'd
deadline.
be much further along in our drinking water hotspot projects if we weren't forced to play catch up.
Absolutely.
Okay.
There's no question. We're continuing to invest in drinking water infrastructure, doing the things that we need to do. Water is, we're in good shape there, but as we master plan, we know we've got some investments that we're going to need to make as well.
Great, appreciate it, thank you.
Yes, sir. Well, with that, I'm going to introduce Brian Culley, and he'll set the stage a little more for us and talk about this year's contract. Thank you, Brian.
Thank you, Clint. Again, I'm Brian Kelly with CDM Smith, and I've been the program manager for Columbia's Clean Water Program for the past 12 years. During those 12 years, I've had the fortunate opportunity to come here and speak to many councils about the progress that Columbia has made on completing those consent decree requirements and the city's march towards becoming a best-in-class utility. That's a big part of what we want to kind of talk through here today. I don't know if you remember what you were doing 12 years ago, but 12 years ago, I was working with city leadership. If you could advance it one. I was working with city leadership in this building and with outside counsel to help negotiate the consent decree back in 2012 with EPA. That was officially signed into the record in 2014 and basically established the criteria and the framework under which we operate today. Now, Mayor, you asked about consent decrees and their typical size. When you're talking about a large municipal utility, the EPA consent decrees are typically measured in billions of dollars in decades. It's not a small issue. Typically, you're talking very large. I think the most recent one I looked at was Houston, which I believe has about a $6 billion consent decree coming down on them right now, just to give you some perspective of size. And so
And 75% of it is wastewater versus drinking water, correct?
absolutely, it's not always wastewater, but typically if you were to put them into a bucket, the vast majority are wastewater. Just easier to out of sight, out of mind sometimes. It's not uncommon. Oh, there you go. Sure, no problem. Let's see here, and typically with consent decrees like the one the city has, is it working now? With consent decrees like typically like the one that the city has, there's sort of two phases of those consent decrees. There's sort of the plan phase and then the do phase. They're not exclusive, they do overlap a little bit. But if you want to talk a little bit about the plan phase. Okay, gotcha. Thank you. There we go. When you talk about the plan phase, that's essentially establishing the asset management framework by which we're going to determine how we're going to map, assess, prioritize our infrastructure that does need that renewal. That's the big cost on the back end. But you're also doing a lot of organizational planning too as well. How are you going to train your staff? What are you doing for emergency planning? How are you going to organize yourself, response? How are you going to record all the maintenance activities that you're doing? So that's a lot of the stuff that you're doing during that planning stage. As a matter of fact, if you see a picture down there on the bottom left, you can see whenever Clint Shealy came into his position, we had a meeting with him and said, here's all the stuff you need to catch up on. And that's a lot of the planning documents. Now, I'm not going to promise you Clint Shealy read every page of it, but he had to listen to us give him a summary. But that's, again, when you get to
I
this,
assure you, he read all of it.
Acronym test too.
I can promise you it would scare you how much of that he does know. But that's a lot of what we're doing during that planning stage is reinventing how the utility runs itself on a day-to-day basis, as well as that assessment and planning for what we're going to do in the infrastructure phase. And then that kind of converts over into the doing phase, if you will, both implementing those organizational plans, but also starting to implement that infrastructure improvement that you're talking about, figuring out where your pipes need fixing, upsizing, and then actually going out and doing that work. And that's sort of where we find ourselves now. So kind of the planning phase was sort of the teens, early 2020s, and now we're clearly into the doing stage. Jamie Kelso is going to talk about this in a little bit in more detail on the doing, but recently there were some very important documents approved by EPA, as Clint Shealy referenced, that sort of give us that definitive list of projects that we have to complete by certain deadlines. That was not known until recently, so that's a big update that y'all have not heard before. All right, as Clint mentioned, on your agenda tonight is the contract mechanism by which we support the Clean Water 2020 program. You'll see that on there. The original contract started for the negotiation support back in 2012. Obviously, the consent decree was implemented in 2012. We were helping with the planning, and then that contract expired in 2023. The city went out for renewal through RFP. We proposed, and the city selected us again for a one-year contract with 5 extension years, so essentially a 6-year contract. Tonight would be the 3rd year of those 6 on that agenda. And as I talk about as we go through all the different phases as a program and how you're doing a lot of the planning initially, the doing later, what you need and how you need to supply support to the city changes. And I want to make sure you understand that as the needs of the city have changed as they go through the different phases of the program, what we have supplied to the city has changed, the support that we're giving, including a very important thing we do pretty much all the time, but especially very intentionally at contract renewal time, which is look at ramping down our services to you. Again, what you need now in the doing phase is very different than what you needed in the planning phase. And every single year we take a look and say, what task are we doing as a consultant that can stop? What task are we doing as a consultant that could get handed back to the city for them to take over permanently, or to a city partner consultant to manage going forward? And so we went through that process again this year, as we typically do with Clint and his staff. I wouldn't be able to get up here and speak and talk about progress without being able to speak about our sub-consultants that are helping us on the program. During the delivery of the program to date, we've had 9 sub-consultants that are female or minority-owned business, 2 additional that were small business, and 1 sub that was not. But those have been a huge part of our success here, and want to acknowledge them. And I want to point out too, tonight we have about 19 to 20% sub-consultant, which meets our 15% goal, which is, we're very happy to show that and have those partners on there. They're a very important part of what we're delivering to you. So that's sort of the history of how we got from the very beginning to now. I can go into a whole lot more detail, but I heard somebody reference a full agenda, so unless there's any questions, I won't go into any further detail about the past to now. But I do want to introduce Jamie Kelso and take a moment and kind of let y'all know. I mentioned during my opening remarks that I had been the program manager of the program for the last 12 years. Well, about a year ago, we officially named Jamie Kelso as my successor. I'm not leaving, I'm not going anywhere. I'm still available for questions or anything like that. Still support the program as an advisor. But day to day, the program is now led by Jamie Kelso. So I've been happy to come up here and speak for many years, more than a decade, to this council about our progress on the consent decree. You'll be hearing more from Jamie going forward. But trust me, I'll be right there in the background. Our offices are right next to each other. I couldn't hide from him if I wanted to, I promise you.
So we finally, all the projects approved at this point, and it's now just scheduled out?
Correct. We now have a definitive list that we can put a box around and say, these are the projects that are required by the consent decree. Before, what we had was sort of the program, say there's the planning programs that we have to figure out what we have to do, and EPA has to buy off on it. We had done those a while back. They've been sitting at EPA not getting approved. Those are finally approved, so now we can definitively, with certainty, put a list of projects in front of you and tell you what those projects are, and those are the ones that are part of the consent decree. That's new. We've not had that previously.
From a time frame, do you see this as that we'd be able, is this the next 5 years, 6 years, 7 years? What are we talking about to try to get this complete? Because
Sure. The latest date that you're going to see from Jamie here in a minute is 2032. Now, it's staggered. There's different parts of those programs that end sooner. Some are in 2028, some are 2030, some are 2032. So it depends on which part of the program. But if you want to say, give me one date I can know is supposed to be the finish line, 2032 would be it. And that's because that's the time it'll take us at the current CIP budgeted rate to be able to complete and execute all those projects so we can go to
don't need to
EPA.
get any more approvals for the projects. We're set. You got it boxed in, correct?
Correct, for the required infrastructure rehab
That's half the
projects.
battle.
They're not designed, they're just,
They're at various stages. A lot of them are designed. Some are still in progress, some are in construction. We started, I said, the planning stage was back in, 2012 and early teens. We were doing projects in 2017, 2018, so we were doing a lot because had we not, there would have been such a huge spike of work at this part of the program, it would have been insanely expensive if we'd have waited till then. So we've been doing all along, but it's more concentrated on doing at this point.
You partnered with 12 sub-consultants.
Yes, sir.
Is that total or what?
That's total on the life of the program, yes, sir. We don't have 12 that we're working with right now. Right now, I believe it's 4 that we're working with in this next year coming forward that'll be on
How's that
council
with
tonight.
minority participation?
See, for minority, it would be very high. I can't break out exactly minority, but it would be the vast, vast majority of what we've done. Yeah, I'll say of those 12, 9 are female or minority. We did have that count up on the slide. The vast majority of those have been minority. Some are both technically, but the vast majority have been minority.
3 of the 4 right now,
3 or 4 what?
3 of the 4 right now are MBE.
So the logos, where down, you see DESA, Atlantic South,
CBC,
CBC, those are the main 3 that are minority right now.
All right.
and that's, if I just was to guess off the top of my head, those 3 are at least 75% of the sub-consultant part of this contract, ballpark. I'm trying to run the math real quick while Jamie's talking. All right, with that, I'll introduce Jimmy Kelso, and he'll give you a lot of detail on current projects and also the roadmap forward. Just point this in here.
This is the magic spot. All right. Thank you, Brian. Thank you all for having me here today. So there we go, perfect. So yeah, moving forward, talk a little bit about the compliance, a little bit more of that where we stand. Brian set the scene, Clint as well, where we've been, what got us to this point, but then I'll be kind of in charge here of where we are right now and then moving forward, where we stand. Again, as Brian said, I'm now serving as the program manager for the Clean Water Program. Been working as Brian's deputy since about 2018, so I've been kind of in the background, making sure these projects are advancing. And then Brian took a day off, so we finally kicked him out one day, moved him to the emeritus advisor role, and moved me into that program manager role for CDM Smith side of things. So several of my slides y'all have already hit on a bunch of the main topics, so whoop, there we go. I knew I was gonna do that at some point. There we go. So where do we stand right now? I went forward way too far. There we go. All 20 program deliverables have been submitted to EPA and DES. Can we talk about that? We've had the picture there of all the different program documents out on the table. All 20 have been submitted, and 19 of the 20 have been approved. You see a bunch of dates on there, a little bit hard to read probably, but you see a bunch of dates in the 2014, 2015, 2016 timeframe. That is when we were in those early years, setting the scene for what the program needed to kind of guide the city on a new way of doing things. That's all those programs, they've all been approved, implemented. Now we're down to the bottom there. You see the one no at the very bottom right corner. That is the Capacity Assurance Program. As the name suggests, we're engineers, we're not coming up with very imaginative names. Capacity Assurance Program is assuring that the capacity is available in the system when a new connection is made. That can be a new restaurant over on Harbison. It can be a new 500-home subdivision up in the Crane Creek Scout area, anything in between that. Making sure that the capacity is in the system, the gravity lines for the most part, pump stations, and of course the treatment plant itself, be able to handle that new flow that comes into the system.
So it's not based on the capacity of the plant. It's based on all the infrastructure that's attached to it.
It's officially based on that as well. It's the gravity pipelines, those pump stations that often are part of that transmission route, and then the treatment plant itself. Quite frankly, the treatment plant has plenty of capacity right now, so that is a kind of just official, let's check that box and move on. It usually comes down to the gravity system itself, most often. So that program is with EPA, waiting for their final approval. We're in some ways okay with that little bit of time they're spending to issue that approval, because once it is approved, that will trigger some timeframes that I'll talk about here in just a second for the completion of projects.
Mayor, let me point out, you don't have to do those projects to be able to get out of the consent decree, but if you don't do them by the time that the capacity runs out, then that portion of the system will go into moratorium. But it's not a required project to appeal to EPA. They'll let you go into moratorium.
Because, I mean, we got a tremendous amount of capacity, right? I mean, we're not even at 50%, are we?
The treatment plant itself has a tremendous amount of capacity, yes. It's
So
probably
it's
somewhere
really the
around that.
infrastructure that goes with that.
A few of the pump stations are kind of close, and most often, though, it is a gravity pipeline that was put in the 1970s. And it is simply too small now for the amount of flow that's coming to it.
And that's what we see physically overflow.
Yes, that's usually, I mean, there's usually a combination of operational type issues. Sometimes you get grease in the lines, you get a collapse of a pipe. We'll fix that through rehabilitation. Quite often, at least half the issue, though, is just too much flow coming to it. And so if anything's wrong with that pipe, then it becomes an overflow often. So these are the three reports that are kind of guiding us through the rest of the way to complete the projects that we've talked about, that we now know what need to be done, and now we have to get them finished. The IR report and the supplemental IR report, that's infrastructure rehab report. Again, as the name suggests, rehabilitation of the various infrastructure in the city's system. The IR report is the big pipes and the big pump stations. That was approved in March and kind of triggers three different criteria, three different levels, if you will, of completion: 3 years, 5 years, and 7 years, based on how critical the rehabilitation need is, how poor of a condition is the asset in. 10 of those 13 projects are already complete. We are doing really good on the IR report, including all the ones that are on that 3-year timeframe. They're all finished. The supplemental IR report is for the small pipes and the small pump stations. That was also approved the same day, back in March earlier this year. There's no real hierarchy, though, to the SIRR. It's just 5 years to complete every project that was associated with that. We're about 2/3 of the way, give or take, through those projects as well. The majority of the 15 not completed are either under construction or at least under design. Councilman Brennan, to your point, almost everything is at least under design at this point. Then the capacity assurance program, again, we mentioned that one's still under EPA's review. Awaiting approval, though, we've been told should be happening sometime soon. That triggers a 60 days for the ones that are extremely undersized. We're good on that standpoint. But really, the bigger time frame that we're watching is that 2 years to complete pipes, pump stations, what have you, that are a little bit undersized, so to speak. We're through 5 of those 12 projects, so you can see kind of from a percentage point, we're a little bit maybe behind in that category, which is what triggered, as Clint Schilly mentioned earlier, the consent decree modification. We went to EPA, the city went to EPA and said, hey, the city's been a great actor through this. There's been a communication continually for 12 years. We need a little bit more time on a few of these projects. And we're waiting at official approval, but we received all the verbal approvals from EPA's technical staff, from the EPA staff attorneys, that is coming, and that will give us additional time for 4 different capacity-related projects. I'm going to get it eventually. I'll have it down by the time I'm finished. So the other part, again, as Clint mentioned earlier, there's the projects component, and then there's the SSOs. The SSOs were really kind of the canary in the coal mine, if you will, that brought in the EPA and started having them looking around and leading to the consent decree. You can see the tremendous improvement back from the 2009, 2010 timeframe, 455, 336. It was honestly on its way down, though, as the consent decree was entered into in the 2012, 2014 timeframe. Then you see, quite honestly, a slight increase. That is, quite honestly, attributed to better tracking, better documentation, better acknowledgement and awareness of what is happening in the system as a lot of those different consent decree programs were implemented. But quite honestly, caught more of the issues and started to fix them. And then you see from about 2020 on, a drop from 200 to about the 130 range for most of the last few years. That 39, of course, is a little bit unfair since that's only 4 months into the fiscal year, but if you kind of project that up, we're still in that 120, 130 range. So again, we've coming back down even after getting a better awareness and tracking
Will
of where
that
we stand.
always be at that level? I mean, just based because of how geographically we're situated? I mean, because it seems to be a consistent number.
To some degree, it's always one of those, the goal was 0. You're probably never going to make 0. I think EPA has a lot of standards out there for number of SSOs per 100 miles of a system. If you look at that for us, probably a best case scenario is maybe something in the, and this is truly best case, something in the 60 to 70 SSOs a year range. In terms, that would be about 5 SSOs per 100 miles, which is kind of a benchmark for EPA.
And prior to 08, 09, it was pretty consistently at that.
It was up there, yes. And yeah, again, for that period of time, which is what led to EPA putting their attention on the city. So similar chart here, I won't spend too much time to keep us moving. From a volume standpoint, again, way down over the last 10 years. Those 3 red items, I wanted to point that out, kind of transition to some project talk here. Those were wastewater treatment plant SSOs, usually partially treated, but still not great for the environment. Certainly gets the riverkeeper's attention. Those were all due to power outages, which have since been most likely resolved due to the completion of an electrical reliability project out at the wastewater treatment plant, kind of in conjunction with Dominion, working with them on that. So we're hopeful no more red bars in the future, and if you kind of take those out moving forward, you can see the volume has had the corresponding drop as well as a drop in the quantity of SSOs. So with that amount, I'll kind of move into some projects and kind of show where we stand on some things, and then kind of move toward wrapping it up. So different areas of the system that have seen a lot of growth and therefore a need in infrastructure improvements. Of course, Crane Creek with the Scout development in particular, there's been some gravity sewer upsizing for a whole entire length of that Crane Creek trunk line running up there. Hopefully that'll go away. Oh, there we go. So again, 3 different projects totaling about a $20 million investment. About half of that, though, was provided by a grant from the Department of Commerce in conjunction with that Scout development. Clint Shealy, of course, was involved in that, and that was a tremendous help to the city to get the 3 projects, the 3 pipeline projects completed. Those are all complete, and I can say the city is ready for Scout to come online right now. Farther down Crane Creek, getting pretty close to the city limits there, up on the Mountain Drive, Clement Road area, you have the Lower Crane Creek Equalization Storage Facility. That's a $66 million project, I believe the largest wastewater infrastructure project the city has undertaken. There's a little drone photo there from just about 2 weeks ago. You can see it's an 8 million gallon storage tank. It's basically just a lever to help alleviate flow increases during rain events and things like that. That is about 60% through construction, and it was funded about half, give or take, $25 million from that same Department of Commerce grant associated with Scout, and then $10 additional million from the SC Rural Infrastructure Agency associated with some of the federal ARPA funds that came through.
Is it a requirement to build a tank versus doing a detention?
It's not a requirement to do that. It's really just, it's the most simplest way to alleviate those massive flows. The alternative would be to make a pipe that's just ridiculously sized for 360 days of the year. So you have this then basically just serving as that catch basin, if you will, for those 5 heavy rain events a year that might come through.
It feels like more these days.
Got that coming. Yep. I'd say this is a similar design. We do have that already in the system over in the Saluda River Basin, over right along the Saluda River in the Kinley Creek, kind of near Shaw, where we have a pump station over there. We have a similar system, and it works great to alleviate that downstream flows that are coming through West Columbia on their way to the treatment plant. So a proven system that's worked for the city before that we're implementing here for the second time. So some other projects scattered across the city, maybe. Can you advance it for me? Sorry. Perfect. The Saluda River Force Main Extension, talking about that over there. Downstream of that pump station and the tanks we have in the Saluda River, we had some undersized pipes. And so we've had a couple of different ways of going about handling that. We have the first picture there on the top right, oops, sorry. There you go, is an upsized gravity line. I just wanted to show off a little bit. That's your Deputy Director of Major Capital Projects there on the left, walking through what is rainwater, muddy rainwater, not an active sewer yet, though. I just wanted to clarify there. But you go back a little bit, there we go. And then the main part of the project, though, is in conjunction with the city of West Columbia. It became more and more difficult and therefore costly for the city to put a force main underneath the Saluda River, just due to the rock nature of that location. West Columbia came to Columbia staff and said, hey, we're looking to put a pedestrian bridge here. It's been a long time goal of ours at this location, basically connecting to the city of Columbia's Saluda Riverwalk location. That coordination has been in progress there, and there's kind of a little bit of a rendering of what we're seeing there, connecting the existing Columbia Riverwalk, Saluda Riverwalk, to a proposed West Columbia Riverwalk in the same area there, connecting also in with some of the zoo, botanical gardens. Of course, the zoo's been having some improvements there as well. with their zip line and everything. And so kind of a whole little setup there that's going to come together pretty nicely, I think, in that area. The force main will be hung from the underside of that pedestrian bridge, saving the city millions of dollars versus going under it, boring underneath the
Is that
river.
all part of the project on the riverbank there?
Yes.
Like by the zoo?
Yes.
By the bridge? That's all leading up to this?
The project, some of this construction that you did see was that gravity line going in just downstream of there, and now be coming to you all probably in mid-2026 for a contract for that bridge itself, which will be the next round of.
Is that at the Candy Lane or is that further down?
It's Candy Lane, yes,
It's
sir.
Candy Lane.
Yep, yep. So the left side of that picture is the connection to the Candy Lane parking area.
I think you just slid it down a little bit.
Yeah.
Yeah. But it was relocated, but not significantly.
So I got it that time, very good. All right, so some other areas, stick into the city limits here for a moment. East Rocky Branch, Phase 1 and 2, another large combined investment there, $37 million for 2 projects that takes us from the Congaree River at the downstream end all the way up to Maxey Gregg Park. Phase 2 is complete, and Phase 1 is actually on your council agenda for this evening to move into construction for that. This is one of those IRR Phase 2 projects that had that 5-year timeframe. So we're looking to get that going and check another one off the list of projects that are completed. Advance it for me, sorry, there we go. Saluda River Basin, again, over in that area, we talked about the Saluda River Force Main extension. The gravity system needed to be upgraded too. So $32 million has been spent there across 3 projects, 2 of which are complete, 1 of which is almost complete, running up Kinley Creek all the way from the Shaw factory there, all the way up to Harbison itself, allowing for more expansion in that Harbison area for whatever may come in that area. Next one for me. And then I'd be remiss if I didn't talk about the treatment plant a little bit. Again, it's kind of consent decree adjacent because it has so much capacity available in it. And overall, the city has done a good job of keeping it upgraded with major improvements. The next one is coming in the next 6 months or so to you all. It is about a $35 million project, and it will handle basically the sludge portion of that in order to properly improve the sludge removal portion before the treated wastewater is put back into the river. So again, a major expansion, or major improvement and investment in that portion of the city system as well.
Now, when we do the thickening improvement, are we looking down the road to pasteurize that and pelletize it instead of having to continue to buy liners,
Yeah.
rent dumpsters and haul that stuff all the way to
It's a,
Shakespeare?
I wish there was a simpler answer. Clint, you can tell, is ready to go on that one.
Thank you, Jamie. Really quickly, Mayor, the thickening improvement needs to happen regardless of how we
First, yeah.
water and potentially dry the solids. So it's a step in the process.
For the
Still gives
long
us
term, are we
options.
looking to do that so we can, I mean, because we spend quite a bit of money hauling
Yes, sir.
sludge.
There are some perfluorinated compounds that could be in biosolids that have kind of steered us away from land application right now. We may look at some destruction technologies down the future as that becomes regulated. So right now, we're still working with the landfill, but we absolutely want to diversify our disposal options. Yes, sir.
Perfect. And I'll say that dewatering improvements, which is, as Clint just said, kind of the second part of the thickening, is on the city's current 5-year plan for getting going toward the end of that 5-year plan, but it is on there as a project that has a home to happen. So, all right, next slide if you can, yeah. So where do we stand? Kind of wrap it up here, bring it home. 3 more slides, I promise. From the funding standpoint, we've been spending money. The city has been spending money. The investment has been incredible. You see certain years that were down for various reasons. Maybe a project got delayed for whatever reason. Easements took longer, a permit took longer, whatever the case may be. There were a couple down years. If you add up all of these from fiscal year 20 through fiscal year 25, which we just completed, I did the math here, it's $566 million was budgeted and 611 has been approved, has actually been allocated to projects. So $45 million over. That, of course, $45 million is from eating into maybe past shortages or past overages in the past, from prior years, I should say. But again, over the last 5 years, city staff has done a tremendous job of getting these projects out on the street. Again, spending even more than has actually officially been budgeted. And we'll continue that with East Rocky Branch, again, on the council agenda this evening. The thickening improvements project that I mentioned a little while ago, once that goes, that is budgeted in this current fiscal year 26, and there's no reason we won't meet or exceed the $93 million for this year as well. So Big picture though, again, that's the money being spent. Tie it back to the consent decree for one last slide here. We originally said from a kind of a non-inflation adjusted standpoint, this was a $750 million consent decree. As projects, sometimes projects took longer, sometimes projects occasionally do come in over budget. A lot of things, just simply the time frame went longer than maybe some people were expected. I know we've kind of mentioned that here today. How long is this consent decree going to go on? The current estimate now with inflation adjustments included is just over $1 billion, 1.06. As Shirley mentioned, we're about 2/3 finished. That's that $644 million that has been approved by council versus the 1.06 total. So 65% or so of through the consent decree is where we are from a project standpoint. But again, every project is known. Now it is just funding, designing, and implementing them. And so my last slide, we've hinted on this a lot already, but kind of where do we stand and where do we think we can wrap this up? We mentioned the Clean Water Program, officially kind of what we're here talking about today. Its sixth year, if we were to go to that point, is estimated to be completed in late 2029. And I put that on there because of how it compares to some of the other things. There's a lot of things coming to a conclusion around that time. Talked about those IRR groups, that hierarchy of how bad is the pipe. March 2030 is that middle tier, that group 2. March 2032 is that last date. I think Brian mentioned earlier, that's the last date you'll see up here is March 2032. But you see IRR group 2, March 2030, SIRR, that's the small pipes, 2030. Those consent decree modifications, the extra time frame we asked for on a few capacity projects. Early and middle of 2029. Again, the Clean Water Program wrapping up in late 2029. And then the last point that Clint already made earlier, we finally saw when we did the 5-year CIP with the city this year, past the peak for wastewater projects, to your point, Mr. Brennan, kind of past the peak on the wastewater side, which means a general transition of the focus to the water funding project, water project funding needs. You are going to see more and more water projects, more and more large water projects on your agendas as the years move forward, as the focus shifts a little bit more to that water side and getting those things going. With that though, that's it. Open up for any other questions I can answer, or Brian or Clint as well for that matter.
Jamie, could you go back to the where do we stand slide?
This one or the one before?
104. So talk about, Clint knows we talk about this a lot, and for the public to understand, and you've touched on it, because some of it's about the timing of the bigger projects and when they come online, but when you see the budgeted versus the approval every single year, getting into FY '23 and coming forward, they're starting to level out and meet up. But talk about why sometimes you would have those greater fluctuations. I think some of those people say, well, you're budgeting all this money and then you only have half of that approved, or then you have another year where you budgeted less and then it's showing a lot more approval. So just want people to understand those fluctuations.
So again, honestly, cards on the table, some of it is sometimes there is a project delay. We intended to, I'll just use fiscal year 1920 there, the first one there on the left as an example. May have intended to have some $40 million project get out that it did not due to a permit delay or what have you. It would be the main reason why the next year was so much higher. That money was still available once the project was finished with design, easement acquisition, permits, all those fun steps. Then it was moved into construction and was completed. Other times it can be the scale of a project, the amount of funding needed has to be spread out over a couple years. We've seen that sometimes with some of the largest plant projects on both the water and wastewater side. With especially the last few years from a true CIP standpoint of about $93 million, that works out to about 60 for wastewater and 30 for water. I'll pick on water for a second, even though we're mostly talking about wastewater. If there's a $30 million water project on a specific year, it can't have the entire $30 million water budget available to it. So we may fund it $15 million one year and $15 million the next. In that case, there's a high likelihood you're going to show that first year as a $15 million shortage, because really just kind of holding that money over for the next year until we got to the full budget needed. I don't know if those are probably the two main scenarios that happen though. Project delays happen, and then how to make it work with a funding standpoint.
Right, and just really, I guess, underscoring the point that if the council approved a $93 million budget one year and not all of it was utilized, then that's why you may see, it's not that they then approved
Certainly, yeah.
additional
I think that,
funds and didn't use it, some of the funds are carrying over.
right, and I believe that's actually the example I used at first there, 1920 and 2021. I believe council said, hey, you only spent half of what we gave you last year. Use that up before we get back to some sort of elevated number moving forward, which we did.
I wanted to add, just think about the 40-some-odd $1 million investment in replacing all of our water meters, which has been transformational to us from a customer service standpoint, been fantastic. We couldn't eat that elephant in 1 year's capital improvement. We had to spread that over multiple years to accumulate the funds, then be able to execute that project. So a couple other things I want to just mention. The throughput capability of the team for the city of Columbia, and I say team, it's not just Columbia Water, it's the finance department, the procurement department, the clerk, management, all the pieces that have to touch the projects, these really large projects to get them through the process, bidding and then the construction, is running like a well-oiled machine. I mean, I've never seen it run this well, so that allows us to get the throughput we need. A couple of other things, we've been driving to make sure we stay out of moratorium. That has been a key driving force for us. We did not want to curtail any developments in the future, and so I'm delighted we've so far been able to do that. In terms of getting the sanitary sewer overflow numbers down even further, as we fix areas of the system, those are areas that we don't have to go and make point repairs and be doing responsive, reactive maintenance. We can turn that staff into doing preventive maintenance, clearing grease blockages, washing lines, doing those types of things. And so as we move strategically more to preventive maintenance, I think that will also help bring those numbers down. So what other questions do y'all have?
Anybody have any questions, Will?
Clint, so, DOT has a website you can go to, the public can go to and see projects, timelines and all that. Do we provide any forward front for residents that want to come on and learn, for example, how's East Rocky Branch Phase 1 going to, work? What neighborhoods are going to be affected during construction?
Yes, sir, we sure do. And so these tear sheets that we provide sometimes with your agenda packets, Dana and her team, we keep the Columbia Water website updated, and you can click on stormwater projects, water or wastewater projects, and get updates, status updates, project magnitude, anywhere from early design phase all the way through construction. So we do our best to keep that updated for the
That's a great
public.
resource, thank you.
And
Yes,
then
sir.
the dashboard too, you
Yes,
all do a great job with, my dashboard that I push out to you all. There's that one that you get, there's the public facing dashboard as well. So I think we've now started putting the clean water information, Columbia Water information on there as well.
We do, yes, ma'am. And I know Dr. Bustles and I sat down a month or so, 2 months ago, and kind of went through some of those. But we slice and dice the data. There are these charts that Jamie showed, but there's a whole bunch of stuff behind that, even down to how we manage the work orders, the type of work orders, and what's being done to address that. So a lot of data analysis is going into it, and I'm excited eventually to see where AI might be able to help us even more fine-tune what we're doing in our efforts. So thank y'all so much. Appreciate the time.
Thank you.
Thank you, great job, thanks y'all. Mr. Mayor, we need to transition for the other items into executive session.
Will, you got a motion?
Yes, Mr. Mayor, I'd like to make a motion that we enter into executive session for discussion of matters relating to the proposed location, expansion, or provision of services encouraging location or expansion of industries or other businesses in the area served by the public body pursuant to SC Code 3470A5, Project Dream, Project Catalyst, and Project Congaree, as well as receipt of legal advice relating to matters covered by attorney-client privilege pursuant to SC Code 3470A2, special revenue sources, and short-term rentals. And also receipt of legal advice relating to a pending, threatened, or potential claim pursuant to SC Code 3470A2, Jerry DeMarco versus City of Columbia. And then finally, discussion of negotiations incident to propose contractual arrangements pursuant to SC Code 3470A2, Wood Creek Farms Bridge Repair Project.
Is there a motion?
So move.
Second? All those in favor?
Aye.
Madam Clerk?
Works for me, so. Any opposed?
Not hearing any, so I think we can move on. I need like a 2-second break.
Yes, sir.